Welcome back. Now, global management consulting firm Bain Company has asked South Africa's Treasury to overturn public work ban, saying it's based on unproven allegations. Last month, Bain SA was placed on a database of suppliers that cannot do work for the state. To get some reaction, I'm now joined by UK Member of Parliament, Lord Peter Hain. Lord Hain, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Now, you set the wheels in motion earlier this year when you called for the ban on Bain Company for their involvement in state capture in South Africa. In August, you were pleasantly surprised that the UK government acted swiftly on their proposal that saw the company barred from doing business with the UK government for 3 years. Are you as surprised by the stance taken by SA on its 10-year ban on Bain?
Nothing surprises me about Bain anymore. Their cheek, their brazen effrontery in challenging effectively the Nugent Commission under Judge Nugent, which condemned them and their behaviour absolutely unethical and terrible. And then, of course, the Zondo Commission saying that it was not only that, but also unlawful, and recommending it for prosecution, for the prosecuting authorities to take action. Now, this is unprecedented. And what Bain did, if you remember, is to, at former President Zuma's, on his instructions, meeting him at least 17 or 18 times personally, not in his presidential office, but in his private quarters, one-to-one, took his instructions to dismantle and immobilize the South African Revenue Service. Well, that's a terrible crime, and they should pay a penalty for it, and I'm astonished that they think they can challenge this, except, as I say, their brazenness doesn't, maybe you shouldn't be astonished anymore.
Speaking of that, you also mentioned that the Zondo Commission has referred Bain for prosecution. SA is imposing a 10-year ban in relation to them receiving government contracts. Now, Bain has lashed back and argues that there is no evidence that Bain SA engaged in any corrupt and fraudulent practices. The ban is fundamentally flawed. What's your take on that particular response?
Look, there's no disputing. In fact, they have more or less admitted, to the extent that they've admitted anything, that they were put in and earned a fat fee for it to immobilize the South African Revenue Service, the tax collecting agency for former President Puter's mates, to make sure that various people who supported him, his various cronies, didn't pay the taxes that any other South African would have to pay in their situation. That's what Bain's mission was, and they did that. Now, whether you call that illegal or not, Zondo has condemned it as unlawful, the Zondo Commission, a judicial commission, remember, not one that just acts on a whim. Before that, the Nugent Commission condemned their behaviour. None of the other corporates involved in the state capture scandal, whether it's McKinsey or KPMG or SAP or any of the others, have been condemned in such caustic terms and in such clinical terms that they may well face prosecution as a result. And not only has the British government accepted this position, that they should be banned and suspended in their case for 3 years, but the National Treasury has as well, and not before time. And I pay tribute to the Director General for the action that he's taken. And, you know, what is important here is that these corporates who helped the looting of the South African taxpayers, the decade of shameless and shameful looting, some of which is still going on, by the way, but it was absolutely brazen under former President Zuma, his family, and, of course, the Gupta brothers, that if they made that possible, and it took two to tango, it wasn't just corrupt politicians, it was businesses acting unethically and sometimes corruptly, that made it possible. Billions and billions of rand stolen from South African taxpayers. Then to turn around and say, we didn't do anything wrong, we shouldn't pay a penalty. I mean, this is totally unacceptable.
Now, while Bain has acknowledged some significant errors in the procurement and execution of their work at SARS, it has consistently denied willingly and knowingly supporting state capture. Do you not believe that it may be premature to enforce a ban before prosecution, as it is Bain has instituted legal action to overturn the UK ban?
No, because let's see whether that legal action that they've announced ever transpires. Because if it got into court, there would be witnesses lining up against them. not only myself, if I'm called, but presumably counsel, lawyers from the Zondo Commission and Nugent Commission, perhaps even Judge Nugent himself. I can't speak for him, of course. And then there would be Athol Williams, the former Bain whistleblower, who's been so brave and has been hounded for his bravery in telling the truth. There'll be a lot of witnesses lining up in court to explain exactly why the British government and the South African National Treasury were correct. So I think this is just to try and fire a shot across the bows and to try and get an alternative media spin on it, compared with the truth coming out as it has so far. Remember, these are two judicial commissions. This is not some allegation by a British politician or even a whistleblower alone. These are legal commissions that found them guilty. And yes, they admitted to errors. Frankly, it's not just errors, it's deeply unethical and wrong business behavior to enable corruption and looting on a prodigious scale to take place. And I'd rather they just held their hands up, admitted that that's what they'd done, paid all the fees back. They've only paid a fraction of the fees they earned from state-owned enterprises under former President Zuma during that decade, and just their senior partners in London and Boston, the United States and the United Kingdom, who were overseeing the South African branch of Bain when they were doing all this terrible activity, just say, look, we did wrong, we accept that we were totally wrong, not that we just committed errors. Everybody commits errors all the time, all of us do. This was maliciously, malevolently wrong behavior, totally unethical. If it wasn't corrupt, then it helped corruption. That was its purpose. And they should pay a penalty for it. And that's why I'm also have written to United States President Biden and saying that he should follow the South African National Treasury and the UK government in instituting a ban on Bain from getting government contracts for a period at least.
And Lord Hain, you haven't only written to the US, but you've also called out for the Chinese, the Indian and the UAE governments to follow suit on imposing bans on Bain in those countries. Beyond the ban, what further action do you believe the South African government should undertake in ensuring global brands, like you mentioned, Bain, KPMG, McKinsey and HSBC, that they don't undermine countries such as South Africa?
Well, I think the clearest example would be to maintain this 10-year ban on Bain for the reason that I've explained, that they have been singled out as having acted unlawfully, which is what the Zondo Commission said, and referred them for prosecution. I think that sends a very clear signal to all global corporates operating anywhere in the world, including in South Africa, of course, that they cannot afford to behave in this way, and they won't get away with it if they do. You've got to create a precedent here, and that's why I was so pleased that in August the British government did so, followed by the South African National Treasury. It establishes a benchmark that any company which is behaving in an unethical way, as Bain clearly did and was found by two judicial commissions to have done so, knows that they will face the penalty, and that their names will be plastered all over the global newspapers like the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal and so on. They've got to feel the pain in order for this kind of behavior to stop, because otherwise they'll do it again. Otherwise corrupt politicians will use these corporates again. And having said that, we want the Bains operating cleanly and ethically, and KPMGs and other global corporates. You want them in South Africa because they set international standards with their professional services. But we want international standards that have got integrity, not ones that are either semi-corrupt or are actually aiding corruption, as Bain did.
Lord Hain, thank you so much for your time. We certainly appreciate it. That's Lord Peter Hain, a member of the UK Parliament, giving us his take on the Bain opposing their SA ban. Now, defending Cape Town Marathon